When I was kidnapped, Osmond was watching the sunrise with his new lover. He nonchalantly told the kidnappers. Keep her tied up. No rush to save her. Let her learn her lesson. It's good if she stops bothering me. In order to stay alive, I had no choice but to take off my clothes and cling to the leader of the kidnappers, trembling as I begged him. I'll behave. Please don't kill me. Later, Osmond finally decided to come save me. The leader of the kidnappers chuckled, looking down at my sleeping figure in his arms. She's worn out. I doubt she has the strength to leave with you. The sound of crashing waves echoed through the dilapidated warehouse, amplified by speakers. Osmond's voice, casual and lazy, had that slightly tipsy, relaxed tone. Daisy, you sure know how to make things complicated now. Yesterday, you tried to get my mom to push me into marrying you. And today, this whole kidnapping stunt? If you're going to die, just die already. Don't waste my time with my baby, watching the sunrise. Osmond. Tears of fear streamed down my cheeks, soaking the ropes that bound my wrists and ankles. I shook my head, desperately explaining. I'm not acting, I didn't set this up. I don't even know why your mom suddenly called the media to announce our engagement. Please, just believe me this once and come save me, okay? Heh, save you? Fine. Osmond sneered coldly. 50 million, right? I'll pay. Hearing this, the kidnappers immediately spoke up. 5 hours later. You bring the money, we'll hand over. Actually, forget the girl. You guys can keep her tied up. No rush to save her. Osmond's voice dripped with contempt and mockery. Let her learn to behave. It's good if she stops bothering me. Consider the money a fee for training her on my behalf. You're serious? The three kidnappers exchanged glances, uncertain. Osmond chuckled darkly, a sinister edge in his voice. As long as you dare, I'll dare to pay. Tears streamed down my face as I shut my eyes in despair. Osmond, you hate me this much? Osmond, I begged through my tears, refusing to give up. I really am kidnapped. I don't need any training. Just save me, and I swear I'll never bother you again. Baby, the sun's up. A cheerful, sweet voice suddenly came through the phone. The girl on the other end happily exclaimed. It's so beautiful. MMM. The sound of lips locking, the wet sounds of a passionate kiss, was so clear, even through the phone. It wasn't hard to imagine how intense that kiss must have been. Despair overwhelmed me, my heart turned cold, and I gave up struggling entirely. I sat on the floor, staring blankly at the ring on my finger, the only thing Osmond had ever given me, and laughed bitterly. So, those promises made in youth really meant nothing after all. The Osmond who swore at 16 he'd marry me, protect me for life, how did he change so much as he grew up? I'm sorry, Osmond. It's my fault. I'm sorry for clinging to you all these years, for bothering you. It won't happen again. It won't, ever again. The phone went silent for a moment, before abruptly hanging up. The beeping sound of the disconnected call echoed through the warehouse. The three kidnappers exchanged glances. The youngest scratched his head, confused. Is Osmond planning to save her or not? Lewis, the way he said if you dare touch her sounded more like a threat to us. The man called Lewis gritted his teeth. Who cares what he meant? We're after the money. This chick is officially his fiancée, they announced it on the news yesterday. As long as we record her, Osmond won't dare not pay. With that, Lewis pulled out a white handkerchief from his pocket. Without warning, he grabbed my head and pressed it over my nose. A strange smell filled my nostrils, making my head spin. There was the sound of my shirt being torn, and Lewis snarled above me. Enough talking, just fuck her. But Lewis, the younger man, hesitated. We were only planning to hold her for a couple of days. And now that Osmond's in no rush to save her, what if his people find out? Lewis threw his cigarette to the ground angrily. So what if they do? You really think he'll let us go clean, leave the underworld behind? That's just him making a show of it, nothing more. His family's been in the criminal world for years. How would they survive legit? Use your brain. If we get found out, we'll just hand her over to him. He's way better at training people than we are. Oh, is that so? The warehouse door suddenly swung open. A tall man in a black coat walked in, flanked by several burly bodyguards. His pale eyes swept over the kidnappers, and he sneered. Why don't I show you my methods of training people right now? The three kidnappers trembled, dropping to their knees in unison. Why, young master? Lewis, his face pale, hastily pointed to me. We found you a girl, she's a real wild one. Look, she's all yours. We already drugged her, she's ready for use. The man's brows furrowed as he glanced at me, a dark glint flashing in his eyes. Even with his impossibly handsome face, he still sent a chill down my spine. Despite the heat spreading through my body, I couldn't help but shiver, curling up further in fear. Seeing this, the man raised an eyebrow slightly. Then, he knelt in front of me, pulling a folding knife from his pocket. His voice was cold, even colder than the gleaming blade. It might hurt a bit. Bear with it. I'll send you off. Send me off? No. Don't kill me. The tension in my mind snapped, and my survival instincts kicked in. I grabbed onto his hands, looking up at him with teary eyes. Please, don't kill me. I'll find a way to get the money. I don't want to die here, not now, please. The man looked down, his gaze sweeping over my hands gripping his. He paused, raising an eyebrow in curiosity. Why does it matter if you die now? I froze, at a loss for words. Is that the point? But I didn't dare not answer. Because, I whispered, lowering my head. I'm still young, I haven't enjoyed life much. It's just, not a good time to die. The man seemed momentarily stunned. Then his thin lips curved slightly, a hint of amusement in his expression. I, however, didn't notice. Because the heat inside me was rising, threatening to consume me. Caught between the fear of death and the terror of being violated by multiple men, I quickly evaluated my options to stay alive. Taking a deep breath, I leaned forward and gently kissed his lips. I'll do whatever you want, I won't fight back. Do whatever you want with me? The warehouse fell deathly silent. The man's eyes darkened instantly. His Adam's apple moved slightly, but he said nothing. I bit my lip, sensing a glimmer of hope. With my bound arms, I raised them around his neck and kissed him again. This time, he gently gripped my neck, pushing me away and creating distance between us. His dark eyes bore into mine. I never planned on killing you. There's still time to back out. I can find someone else to help you. But if you come with me, there's no turning back. The heat surged through my body, my eyes already hazy. I burrowed into his arms, shaking my head. I'll go with you. No regrets. Since my innocence was bound to be taken, I might as well choose someone handsome. In the next second, my lips and tongue were seized. He gripped the back of my head tightly. In the hotel bathroom, the shower splashed loudly. Our breaths, heavy with tension, made the heat rise higher and higher. My hands were pulled up over my head, and he pressed me against the wall, dominating me. Yet his fingers still found the time to tease, brushing over the ring on my hand. His thin lips curled into a smirk. A woman with a fiancé, and you still dare to seduce me? Did you think I was a nice guy? Warm water poured down, making it hard to open my eyes. My whole body was limp, barely able to stand, my mind hazy. No fiancé, no ring, don't need it anymore. Heh, so it's your first time? He leaned in, his voice a husky laugh next to my lips, as he pulled the ring off my finger. Don't need it? Then I'll give it back to him. He lowered my arms, and as I slid down weakly, I clung to his strong, muscular back. My moans were incoherent and breathless. Kerwin, that's my name, he whispered seductively in my ear. Say my name. Ah. I screamed, my nails scratching his back. Kerwin. Osmond. On a sunbed by the beach, a delicate woman lay in Osmond's arms, giving a soft protest when she noticed his distracted expression. Then she leaned in, trying to kiss him. But Osmond turned his head, avoiding her. His eyes focused on the phone on the nearby table, which hadn't rung in a while, and his brows furrowed. Daisy, call again. Call me one more time and I'll believe you. You've checked your phone over 20 times in the last 4 hours. What's the big deal? If you're that worried about her, just go see her. Osmond's friend, Marvin, on the neighboring lounger, had been watching him and couldn't help but shake his head with a sigh. When we were kids, you said you'd marry her, got her heart all wrapped up in you. Then you grew up and turned cold, acting like you want to be some carefree playboy, tired of her clinging to you and nagging you. These years, your reputation has spread far and wide. Your mom's getting anxious and is trying to pressure you into settling down through the media. That's pretty normal. It may not even be Daisy pulling the strings. And let me remind you one last time, hearts can grow cold. No one's going to wait for you forever. How many more times do you think you can get away with pushing your luck? Don't wait until you've broken her heart for good, only to regret it later. Osmond paused, his fingers slightly twitching, before he looked down and quietly scoffed. I won't regret it. Being tied down to one person for life? That's way too boring. I hope she leaves sooner rather than later. Stop hanging on to some teenage romance and sticking to me like glue. It's getting old. Marvin frowned at his words, ready to say something more, but Osmond didn't want to listen. He stood up, grabbed a bottle of champagne, and as it sprayed into the air, he joined the wild party happening on the beach. Marvin pursed his lips, muttering under his breath, self-destructive jerk. Suddenly, a shadow fell over him. Marvin blinked, seeing Osmond return with a teasing glint in his eyes. Osmond's face was cold as he picked up his phone. The moment he unlocked the screen, it rang. Osmond, it was his assistant. Someone just dropped something off at the office. It's for you. The sender is Miss Daisy. Osmond scoffed in disdain, a look of contempt flashing in his eyes. What a fool I was, worrying about her just now. It's a ring. I think it's the one Miss Daisy always wears. Osmond's pupils suddenly contracted. Say that again? What? The assistant quickly sent a photo of the ring. Osmond took one glance and recognized it instantly. It was the proposal ring he'd given her when he confessed his feelings at 16. Daisy had worn it like a treasure ever since. An indescribable feeling surged in Osmond's chest, but it was soon buried under a wave of anger. With a sneer, he typed furiously into the chat. So your fake kidnapping drama has fallen flat, huh? Trying to play hard to get again to manipulate me? Daisy, you've returned the ring, so we're truly done. Don't bother me again. But the message seemed to disappear into a void. In the chat box, which was always met with an instant reply, there was nothing. Osmond, growing more irritable, scrolled up through their messages. It was filled with Daisy's one-sided concern for him. His lips curled into a cold smile. Right, how could Daisy not like him? She's just putting on a show, as always. Determined to teach her a lesson, Osmond turned off his phone, cutting off any chance she had of regretting or making amends. Then he stood up abruptly, shaking the champagne vigorously. Pop! The champagne exploded, and Osmond smashed the bottle on the ground. Grabbing the woman beside him, he laughed wildly and recklessly. I'm in a great mood today. More drinks. The next morning, I woke up to find Kerwin wasn't in the room. Being kidnapped for the first time, I had no idea what the protocol was after sleeping with the leader. Should I keep waiting for someone to come ransom me? Or am I now his woman for life, bound to follow him? Or maybe. Looking at the empty room and my unbound hands and feet, I wondered if I should try sneaking out. The clothes on the floor were a mess, my shirt and stockings torn apart. I could only find Kerwin's oversized shirt to throw on and carefully tiptoed toward the door. From the balcony behind me, I suddenly heard Kerwin's teasing laugh. Those 3 men might be loyal to you, but they sure as hell don't answer to me. They're still your little traitors from the old days, and getting beat up is the least of what they deserve. As he spoke, the balcony door slid open. Kerwin stepped out, not noticing me by the door. He held his phone away from his ear, probably because the person on the other end was swearing. Kerwin's smile turned colder. Father, don't forget. I'm in charge of the family now. If they mess up my plans to retire clean, I'll kill every last one of them, and you better not complain. Without waiting for a response, Kerwin hung up the phone. His gaze lifted slightly, and he spotted me. He froze for a few seconds, then his dark eyes filled with playful amusement. You think you can use me and run? I flinched, shaking my head frantically. I wasn't trying to run. At that moment, I finally remembered who Kerwin was, heir to the Chi family, the top underground syndicate. A man like him, dangerous and ruthless, wasn't someone I could escape from. Staying obedient seemed the only way to survive. Kerwin raised an eyebrow, taking slow, deliberate steps toward me until I was backed against the door with nowhere left to go. His eyes scanned my exposed legs under his shirt, darkening as he reached out to lift me into his arms. My bare feet landed on top of his shoes. There are bodyguards swarming the door outside. And you planned on walking out like this? If you're not trying to run, then you must have a death wish. I could hardly stand like this, so I clung to his neck, pressing myself weakly against the door as I whispered, negotiating softly. My parents are both scientists, working in remote mountains with no signal. They're highly respected, but they don't have much money. It'll take a long time for them to realize I'm gone and come up with a ransom. Kerwin blinked, then chuckled. If you're with me, you won't need money. I hesitated at his words. So there's no ransom, does that mean I'll be with him for good? I don't know how this works. Do I need to stay here the whole time? Or, maybe. Before I could finish, my lips were suddenly kissed. Kerwin gently brushed my lips with soft, teasing kisses, a smile tugging at the corners of his thin lips. Do you know how to date? I was stunned, blinking in confusion. Huh? The next moment, my body was lifted into the air. Kerwin scooped me up in his arms and laid me down on the bed. He leaned close, his lips brushing against mine as he laughed softly. Let's just follow the usual dating routine. 3 days later, Osmond finally powered up his phone. 3 days of wild indulgence. The whole villa looked like it had been hit by a storm, with nothing left but a mess of plates and an overwhelming air of debauchery. Even his phone had to be dug out from between the couch cushions. Osmond pressed the power button and leaned back on the sofa, sneering as he waited for the barrage of notification sounds. So many messages. They must all be from Daisy. Day after day, she'd text him over the most trivial things. Annoying as hell. This time, she'd probably flooded him with essays. When the notifications finally stopped, Osmond lazily tapped the screen. Just as a call came through, which he accidentally answered. Seeing the caller ID, he frowned. It was his mom. She must have been recruited by Daisy to play mediator again. Osmond was about to speak when his mother's anxious voice came through first. Son, have you heard from Daisy? She hasn't responded to me in 3 days. Did something happen to her? 70% of his drunkenness instantly faded. Osmond shot upright on the sofa, his frown deepening. Couldn't be reached? Out of nowhere, he suddenly remembered the call from 3 days ago about a kidnapping. Was Daisy still playing games? Osmond's lips pressed into a tight line as he dialed her number, his expression grim. He couldn't quite explain what he was feeling. There was some panic, sure, but mostly a deep, simmering anger. Daisy had really gone too far this time. Hello? The call connected quickly. But the voice on the other end was a deep, unfamiliar man's voice. Osmond's expression froze, and his heart plummeted. 3 a.m. Daisy's phone was answered by a man. These two facts alone spelled out the reality of the kidnapping. Panic surged through him. Osmond clenched his fists tightly, his voice strained with tension. Where's Daisy? Let her talk to me. You didn't do anything to her, did you? Tell me where you are, I'll come pay the ransom now. The man on the other end paused, as if chuckling softly. But he didn't say much, just spoke in a gentle, husky tone. Not tonight. She's too exhausted to go with you. Osmond shot to his feet. His eyes trembled with rage. In the next second, he roared, kicking over the coffee table, his eyes blazing red. You touched her? Who the hell gave you permission? Didn't I say I'd pay? Everyone in the villa froze, as if the world had been put on pause. No one dared move. They could only watch as Osmond's eyes filled with murderous intent. The veins in his neck bulged as he struggled to control his fury, taking a few deep breaths before finally wiping his face, calming down just a little. How do I pay? How do I get her back? Kerwin lowered his eyes, glancing at the woman sleeping peacefully in his arms. He suddenly remembered her frustrated expression earlier when she said she didn't have any money to pay a ransom. He smiled slightly. 50 million. Transfer it to her account. It wasn't until the next morning that I found out I'd been ransomed. Kerwin stood by the bed, casually buttoning his shirt sleeves. His expression was calm, and he naturally handed me my phone, which had been fully charged. They brought it back last night. It's already been repaired. You fell asleep in the middle of the night, so I answered a call from your ex. I got you 50 million in spending money. My eyes widened in shock as I took the phone from him, bewildered. Seeing over 100 missed calls on the screen left me completely dumbfounded. They were all from Osmond? Kerwin clearly noticed the number too, raising an eyebrow casually. Guess I'm too good at conversation. He seemed unsatisfied. Unsatisfied? Kerwin grabbed his suit jacket, draping it over his arm. His dress shirt and trousers accentuated his broad shoulders and narrow waist, and I couldn't help but feel my face heat up. Memories of the past few days of indulgence and passion flashed through my mind. Kerwin noticed my reaction, a smile playing on his lips as he leaned down to place a soft kiss on my forehead. Don't tease me. Otherwise, you won't be able to leave. My face flushed bright red. Kerwin gently ruffled my hair, raising an eyebrow calmly. Give my regards to your ex. Yeah, no doubt, he's as magnanimous as ever. Though those 3 kidnappers had been dealt with, they were still Kerwin's men. If things got messy, it could cause some trouble. So, he couldn't send me home himself. I took a cab back on my own. But I didn't go home. Instead, I went to Osmond's mother's place. My parents' work meant they were away for long periods, so I'd practically grown up under Osmond's mom's care. Daisy, everything's okay now. You're home. Osmond's mother held my hand, her eyes red with guilt. Osmond, on the other hand, sat silently on the sofa across from us. Since I entered, he'd done nothing but stare at me, his dark eyes filled with unsettling anger. Osmond's mom called his name twice, but when he didn't respond, she ignored him and continued apologizing through her tears. Daisy, I'm so sorry. It's my fault for not thinking things through. I was just trying to push that brat to marry you. I never imagined it would lead to you being targeted by kidnappers. Thank goodness they only wanted money. If anything worse had happened to you, how could I ever face your parents? Suddenly, there was a loud crash as Osmond shot up from the sofa. It seemed like something had finally snapped in him. He grabbed me and dragged me upstairs without a word. His hands were cold, like ice. I struggled, but he wouldn't let go. Osmond, let me go. But he ignored all the protests around him, pulling me straight into a bathroom and locking the door behind us. Take a shower, he said, his voice cold, though his fingers trembled slightly. Osmond, are you out of your mind? I was utterly confused, shaking him off and heading for the door. I was clean, why the hell would I need a shower? But Osmond yanked me back, glaring at me like he was out for blood. Where is he? I froze. Who? The veins in Osmond's neck bulged, and even saying the name seemed to fill him with rage. The kidnapper who answered the phone last night. I laughed, shaking free from his grip. Is it possible that he's the one who saved me, not the kidnapper? Osmond let out a bitter, mocking laugh, practically gritting his teeth. He saved you, by taking you to bed? Does rescuing you involve touching you? Honestly, I didn't understand why Osmond was so angry. Isn't it obvious? I sneered. I was kidnapped, not on vacation. I'm lucky I wasn't worse off, don't you think? Luckily, the leader of the kidnappers was Kerwin. Luckily, he showed up that day. As soon as I said that, Osmond froze for a few seconds. Then, as he grasped the meaning behind my words, his expression shattered. His anger crumbled, replaced by a helpless look in his eyes. I didn't think it was real. I thought you were acting, that they were just people you hired to pressure me into marriage. If I had known. I let out a cold laugh, cutting him off. Thinking back to that day, I felt nothing but a chilling calm deep inside. You didn't know? Didn't you offer 50 million as a thank you fee, asking them to teach me a lesson? It could have been just a simple kidnapping solved with money. But because of your one remark, it turned into a punishment for me. If I hadn't been rescued, I'd probably be in countless humiliating videos by now, right? Osmond, congratulations. I've really learned my lesson. I won't bother you anymore. Osmond's face went stiff, and his eyes dulled like a fire doused by water. His jaw clenched, as if he was grinding his teeth. After a long silence, he finally seemed to convince himself, and with difficulty, opened his mouth. Forget it, Daisy. Forget the kidnapping, forget that man. Forget the two of you. He suddenly stopped mid-sentence. His lips trembled, but he couldn't get the rest of the words out. Taking a deep breath, he turned his face away, speaking much softer now. Just pretend none of it ever happened. If you want to marry me, that's fine. As long as it's not about love or loyalty, I can give you anything. For a moment, I wondered if I'd misheard him. Did Osmond really just say something reasonable? Did he forget that it was him who came after me in the first place? He confessed his feelings to me and proposed when we were 16, not 6. As we grew older, he casually tossed those promises aside. He never thought about how I, already drawn in and in love with him, could take back the heart I'd given away. It was like being a stray dog taken in, only to be abandoned again. Lost, aggrieved, whimpering. Yet it was so hard to return to a life of wandering. In the end, I collapsed under the weight of wanting love and chased after him, tail wagging, begging to feel that warmth again. But sometimes, I would think, maybe it would have been better if he'd never taken me in. Never come after me. Let's not do this. Anger, frustration, and so many other emotions tangled inside me. But in the end, all that was left was resignation. I lowered my eyes, smiling calmly. Don't force yourself. I've already given up. I won't like you anymore, or annoy you. So, there's no need for you to make such a big sacrifice. It's all in the past now. From now on, you can live your carefree life as you please. I meant every word. But strangely, Osmond seemed even more upset by my compliance. A flicker of panic crossed his brows, and his tone turned mocking and irritated. You're saying that, but do you really believe it yourself? Can you actually stop bothering me? If you can't do it, don't push yourself. I never said you had to disappear from my life. I just can't give you love. That's all. My gaze fell on my ring finger. There used to be a ring there. But it had been off for 3 days now, and there wasn't even much of a mark left. Just like how I had clung to my hopes, unwilling to let go of the past. Giving up took only a moment. Osmond, I can do it. Osmond's eyes narrowed sharply. He stared at me intensely for a few seconds, and then, as if sure I would break my word, his lips curled into a slight smirk. You'd better. I have to. For some reason, Kerwin's face flashed in my mind. After that day, I kept my promise and stayed as far away from Osmond as possible. I stopped sending him random interesting things all the time. I stopped caring whether he was being flirty or intimate with someone else. And I no longer appeared in front of him for no reason. I even stopped attending gatherings with mutual friends if he was going to be there. During that time, Osmond's mother noticed my growing distance and messaged me a few times. But after a few tries, she saw where I stood and sighed lightly. It seems like it wasn't meant to be after all. A little over a month later, on Christmas Day, Marvin came to my pottery studio. He raised an eyebrow, smiling as he watched me calmly instruct the students. Daisy, are you serious this time? Really done with that self-destructive jerk? I clicked my tongue, giving him a sidelong glance. It's Christmas, shouldn't you be at home with your wife instead of wandering around here? Aren't you afraid the wife you finally won back will leave again? Marvin's smile instantly faded. He grabbed a small lump of clay and tossed it lightly at my apron. I'm here to check on you. Then, looking a bit bored, he dusted his hands off and got up from the chair. He placed a handwritten invitation on the table. The pale pink paper featured elegant calligraphy, clearly written by his wife, who practiced calligraphy herself. It's our 3rd wedding anniversary. Anyway, Osmond will definitely be there. Up to you whether you come or not, I'd understand if you don't. After saying that, Marvin grabbed the bouquet of roses next to him and gave me a little nod before heading for the door. But just before leaving, he paused, turning back to look at me. Daisy. Osmond, he still has feelings for you. Over the past month, he's acted carefree, moving from one new fling to the next. But the truth is, he often just stares at his phone, waiting for a message from you. I'm not saying this to defend him. I just don't want to see you throw away all the years you've held on, now that things are finally starting to turn around. So, I figured I'd say something. It's up to you how you want to handle it. Either way, I've got your back. And if you want to start fresh, I'll introduce you to someone new in no time. Just then, the door to the studio opened from the outside, and the bell above chimed cheerfully. Kerwin walked in, wrapped in a black down jacket, snowflakes clinging to his shoulders. Excuse me. Kerwin's voice was cool and detached. Marvin was staring at his handsome face, caught off guard. When he snapped out of it, he hurried to step aside and apologized. But before leaving, he turned back to glance at Kerwin, his eyes filled with a puzzled look, as if trying to recall where he'd seen him before. Is it snowing? I raised my eyebrows, looking outside with a smile. Snow on Christmas, it's so fitting. Yeah. Kerwin nodded but said nothing more. Taking advantage of the moment when all the students were distracted by the snow, he came over and leaned down to give me a quick kiss. His lips were cold, sending a shock through me, making my eyes widen. I playfully punched him, my eyes sharp with reproach. What are you doing? There are people here. But Kerwin just smirked, raising an eyebrow as if he had every right. As your secretive, hidden-away boyfriend. Sneaking kisses is the least I can do. Wouldn't want to ruin your brother's plans to introduce you to someone new. Who's hiding? We'd been dating openly for over a month now. It's just that I'd been avoiding people, trying to steer clear of Osmond, so not many people knew. The clock on the wall chimed, signaling 6 o'clock. I tilted my head toward Kerwin and announced the end of class to the students. By the time the last student had been picked up by their parents, it was completely dark outside. The streets were lit with festive holiday lights, and the falling snow added a touch of romance to the scene. Kerwin hugged me from behind, pulling me into his arms. His lips lightly brushed against my ear, his voice magnetic. The mood is perfect now. How about a date, girlfriend? This guy never stops. At 10:10 p.m., my usually quiet social media feed had a new update. Merry Christmas. To the guy who's sarcastically asking me to go public. The photo? Our hands intertwined. Marvin finally remembered who Kerwin was. Kerwin, the youngest heir to take over his family business at 25. On the very day he took over, he announced he would end his parents' shady dealings, washing his hands clean of the underworld, and ordered the whole family to stop any illicit activities. In just 6 months, he single-handedly elevated the company to the top 15 most prestigious enterprises. Why would someone like that show up at Daisy's small pottery studio? He couldn't be there to learn pottery, right? My phone buzzed, and suddenly the group chat exploded. Holy crap! Daisy went public? And I noticed something important. They're holding hands in front of a bed. It's 10 p.m. Are they living together now? Is it with Osmond? No, Osmond was drinking at my place last night, waiting for someone's message. He stared at his phone the whole night. The chat fell silent for a few seconds before someone quietly typed. Was he waiting for Daisy? The conversation awkwardly paused there. No one sent another message. Marvin's heart sank, and he hurriedly exited the chat to check Daisy's social media. When he saw the ring on her slender finger, he gasped. Damn, the jerk finally did it. The day after Christmas was a weekend, and the pottery studio was closed. I left Kerwin's place, but didn't go straight home. Instead, I made a special trip to the mall. I picked out a 3rd anniversary gift for Marvin and his wife. Oh, and while I was at it, I also bought a tie for someone as a belated Christmas gift. Ding. The elevator door opened on my apartment floor. Just as I was about to step out, a dark figure suddenly lunged at me. I was shoved hard against the elevator wall. I cried out in pain, but it was muffled by a forceful kiss. MMPH. The strong smell of alcohol hit my nose. Osmond, his eyes bloodshot, held my face and kissed me roughly, almost biting my lips. It hurt so much that I winced. Let go of me. I struggled to push him away, but when his tongue forcibly pried my lips apart, I bit down hard. Ah! Osmond yelped in pain, finally letting me go. I didn't hesitate for a second and started to run. But I barely took a step before he grabbed my wrist. Do you think I'm going to eat you? Why are you running? Osmond yanked me back, his voice furious. I swung the gift boxes in my hands and smashed them against his head. Then what were you just doing, huh? Having a breakdown? Yes. Osmond kicked the scattered boxes on the floor. His chest heaved violently as his gaze locked onto the ring on my finger, as if he was about to lunge and bite my neck at any second. Where were you last night? Why didn't you come home? I was utterly baffled. Where I go has nothing to do with you, does it? Osmond's body trembled. He wiped his face, his eyes sharp. Who is he? Such a familiar question. I looked up at him calmly and didn't answer. Osmond realized it on his own, his face turning pale. Whether it was the alcohol or something else, his body swayed slightly, and he braced himself against the wall. Did he force you? No, we're just together. Osmond closed his eyes, hiding the cracks forming in them. Break up with him. You still want to be with me, right? Fine, we can be together. Break up with him, and I'll pretend none of this happened. He sighed softly, as if surrendering to some invisible force. Daisy, you win. I've missed you so much lately. We'll be together. I won't see anyone else anymore. I understood. He thought my public post last night was just a way to mess with him. Osmond, I'm not you. I know my own heart. When I like someone, I pursue them openly and honestly. I wouldn't be so childish as to use someone else to compete over love. Osmond's face went ghostly pale. His fingers curled inward, but he couldn't clench them into a fist. His eyes reddened, and he forced a bitter smile. Impossible. You used to like me so much. How could you be with someone else so soon? I curled my lips into a mocking smile. Who takes teenage crushes seriously? I didn't want to argue with him anymore. After saying that, I walked to my apartment door and started unlocking it. The beeps of the keypad echoed. As the door opened, a trembling plea sounded behind me. Can I start loving you again now? This time, I'll chase you. I turned my head slowly, disbelief filling my eyes. Where was this before? Now he wants a fresh start? Osmond looked defeated, suddenly at a loss. I just hadn't fallen for you yet back then. Or maybe. I didn't realize I had. He had really contradicted himself. He used to say he'd never regret it. But when he saw that picture of her holding someone else's hand, he regretted it so much he wanted to tear that man apart. That was his Daisy. She was always right behind him, always there when he turned around. How had she been taken away halfway through, beyond his reach? How could any adult not know what they want? They're just playing dumb, pretending they're invincible. Not realizing you're in love. That's usually just an excuse idiots use to cover up their greed. At the elevator entrance, Kerwin was suddenly standing there, arms crossed and leaning against the wall. His beige hoodie and black sweatpants somehow gave off a slightly cocky vibe. Osmond's eyes narrowed sharply when he saw Kerwin's face. There was a clear sense of danger in his gaze. He'd obviously connected the dots between Kerwin and the man who had taunted him on the phone that night. Kerwin. So it's you. Kerwin smirked, raised 2 fingers to his forehead in a mock salute, his expression effortlessly cool and roguish. Hello, you must be the ex-boyfriend who didn't realize what he lost until it was too late. Osmond's face darkened instantly. But Kerwin didn't seem to notice, his relaxed gaze sweeping over the scattered gift boxes on the floor. Finally, he spotted the tie that had been thrown out. He looked up at me, amusement dancing in his eyes. Is that my gift? I puffed my cheeks, annoyed. No. Oh. Kerwin responded, but he bent down and picked up the tie anyway, slinging it around his neck as he walked over to me, completely nonchalant. Help me tie it. I rolled my eyes and pulled him inside. Why are you trying to wear a tie with a hoodie? No big deal, I look good in anything. The door closed behind us. I didn't look back, but I still heard the faint, sorrowful murmur behind me. But you learned how to tie a tie for me. In the end, I still attended Marvin and his wife's party. Kerwin, dressed in a sharp suit, stood tall and straight, instantly capturing everyone's attention as soon as he stepped out of the car. Marvin approached with a warm smile, extending his hand to him. Hello, Kerwin, I'm Marvin. Kerwin shook his hand back, smiling just as kindly. But what he said next made me want to cover my face in embarrassment. Right? You think my tie looks great too, don't you? Daisy gave it to me when she publicly announced I was her boyfriend. Guests began arriving one after another, and the party grew lively. With Kerwin's status, even if he didn't want to socialize, he couldn't avoid mingling with others. I found a quiet corner, enjoying some tiramisu while watching Marvin on stage, holding his wife's hand, crying like a fool. It made me feel sentimental. Marvin used to be quite the player, one of the worst out there. Chasing his wife was tough, but somehow, he actually managed to win her back. A shadow appeared beside me. I didn't turn to look, but I already knew who it was. I'd expected we'd meet today. Compared to the last time when he was reeking of alcohol, Osmond had at least cleaned up decently today. But the exhaustion in his expression and the red in his eyes told me everything. He hasn't been doing well lately. Daisy. Osmond spoke, struggling to call my name. He looked up at the couple embracing on stage, then raised his hand towards me. In his open palm lay a ring. It seemed like he'd clenched it so tightly before that it left marks on his hand. Let's get married too, okay? I'm sorry. I'm so late to propose, so many years late. I won't let you down anymore. I'll treat you well. From now on, it'll only be you, for the rest of my life. I set down my fork, having lost my appetite. I reached out and took the ring I used to always wear. As his eyes finally lit up with hope, I turned and opened the balcony door. The ring traced an arc in the air and landed in the swimming pool. Osmond's body swayed. His already pale face drained of all color, and his lips trembled as he frantically said, Daisy, I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. Before, I didn't know how to cherish you. I was stupid. I've been changing, I'm trying to win you back. But you blocked me. Osmond still couldn't bear to recall the despair of being blocked after sending that message yesterday. Just when he'd found a way, when there was a glimmer of hope, that red exclamation mark shattered it completely. Daisy, I'm not asking you to forgive me right now, or take me back. But at least, leave me a path, okay? Leave me a chance to make things right, a way to pursue you again. Turn left when you leave. A cold sneer suddenly broke the silence. Before I could react, I was pulled into a strong, warm embrace. Kerwin held me possessively, raising an eyebrow arrogantly at Osmond. Ever heard of a crematorium? I'll come help you collect your ashes when the time comes. After Osmond's interruption, it didn't seem appropriate for Kerwin and me to stay any longer, out of respect for the hosts. We said our goodbyes and left early. Aren't we going home? I looked at Kerwin, who was glancing down at the GPS, a little confused. No, not yet. I'm in a good mood today. I'm taking you to the beach to watch the sunrise. I really believed Kerwin. Yes, we did watch the sunrise. But he didn't mention what we'd be doing before then, in the car, ahem. When the passion reached its peak, in that most heated moment, Kerwin lifted my hand, and a brief, cool sensation touched my ring finger. For one fleeting second, I was fully aware, but in the next, I was lost again, our fingers tightly intertwined. Marvin's call came in just as dawn was about to break. Exhausted, I leaned against Kerwin's chest, my voice still heavy with sleep. What's up, Marvin? But it wasn't Marvin on the other end. It was another mutual friend of ours. Daisy, you should come check on Osmond. He's been diving in the pool for hours trying to retrieve the ring you threw. It's freezing out here, and no one can withstand that. He passed out as soon as we got him out of the water. He's in the hospital now, and his fever's so high he's practically delirious. You guys grew up together as childhood friends, at least come see him. Hearing this, I pressed my lips together, then calmly said, is he awake? If he's conscious, give him the phone. There was silence on the other end for several seconds. Then, I heard Osmond's weak, hoarse voice, choked with tears. Daisy, I found the ring. I found it. Can you? Osmond, I slowly interrupted him, you've really come up with a lot of ways to bother me lately, huh? Stop doing these pointless things. Don't ruin my sunrise with Kerwin. There was a sudden halt on the other end of the line. I froze too. Because just at that moment, as I glanced down, I saw the diamond ring on my ring finger. It shone brightly in the early morning light. Kerwin wrapped his arm around my waist, half enveloping me in his embrace. With his other hand, he gently touched the ring, his voice low. Now that you're wearing my ring, you're stuck with me for life. If you try to run. A smile played on my lips as I raised an eyebrow. I'll scatter your ashes. And,